Can you believe it's the end of April? It's wild. I don't know where the first 4 months have gone, but here we are. And I will tell you, I do believe this is information. So I think this is really good intel that we got for you. Let's hop into it. End of April. Here we are. Rates, yeah, call it 6.4, 6.5, about where they've been. You can see here that this is the 10-year treasury. So up means higher rates. So the last, what is that, since April 20th? So the last week or so, rates have been increasing. And you can see that ultimately they're about ballpark where they started April. So a little bit higher, but for the most part, April was a little better than a little worse. And we're kind of just flat. So here's another trend of just where rates have been to put it in perspective. Blue line is the 30-year fixed rate. And you can see that since November of 25, we've basically gone from about 6.3 to 6.4. So big picture, kind of just flat, like not doing a whole lot. And you can say, well, there's some volatility. Sure, yes. And did they hit 5.9, 1 point somewhere in there? Yes. But at the end of the day, for the most part, when you look at it, month over month, it's not that big of a change. The big news for this week. So the Fed met. The Fed kept rates the same, so that's not really like big move, big moving news. But what's interesting is this is Jerome Powell's last time, or last time leading the Fed, at least as the chair, and he basically made a statement, which was he's sticking around. So we'll see how that plays out. That's not normal. That's only happened two other times in the history of the Fed, 113 years. And the very first one was one that stuck around. Then the other one was, I think it was in the 30s because of World War II. So not normal. We'll see what happens. And the Fed voted 8 versus 4. So you had four dissenters. Only one person wanted to cut rates. The other three just dissented because of what was held in the actual statements that came out afterwards. So while it was a boring result, a lot of inner workings in there that kind of made it interesting. And I think that's worth just noting to see what comes in the future. Inflation just came out, the PCE, and you can see these numbers December, January, February, March, up 3.5%. That's not good, guys. It does not help our interest rates. That's part of the reason why rates are going up. Oil is expensive because of all the mess that's going on in the Middle East. So I don't unfortunately see rates coming down anytime soon. I think we're going to have more of the same for the rest of this, foreseeable future. GDP, meaning how fast our economy is growing, it was at 2%. So I will take that. That's good. However, if you read the fine print down there at the bottom, it is weaker than they were expecting. But more importantly, 1.5, meaning 75% of that number, 1.5 of it can be attributed to AI and data centers, which means the rest of the economy is not doing a whole lot. So 75% of that number is basically AI. So that Q4 number is kind of what Q1 looks like if you strip out all the AI stuff. Now, the reality is AI does exist. It is what it is, but that's still very interesting to say the economy, while doing well, may not be doing as good as you think based on those numbers. I saw this. I don't know that I agree with these numbers, or at least I don't feel like these numbers are accurate. So it's showing that there's so many more sellers compared to buyers. And I think it's really indicative of that chart in the bottom right, where you see, call it 2 million, sellers compared to the 1.4 million buyers that are out there. So in theory, you could say it's a buyer's market, but the reality is, the last bullet point on the left kind of gives it away. Home prices are rising slower, meaning 1.6 compared to 4.8 in other markets. So look, if you give me an appreciation that's anywhere from 2 to 3%, I think that's a normal and healthy market. I don't know that I'd call this a seller's market or a buyer's market. I think it just is. And because this is nationwide data, I know the Northeast inventory is just stuck. Nobody's selling. So I know there's parts like in Austin where everybody's trying to sell. So I think it's just, I'm sharing it just so that you're informed. You see what's out there, but I just don't get caught up in the headlines and all the fancy charts. This part is for every one of you out there that sells real estate, sells mortgages, is a builder, etc. The number one stat, and my team's tired of hearing me say this, speed to lead, 74% of buyers hired the first agent they talked to. 3 out of 4 people. And that stat, I've seen it for mortgage people, it's very comparable. And it's not about your lowest rate. It's not about cutting your commission. It's not about how good you are. It's just 3 out of 4 people contact the first agent, and that's who they work with. To me, that's just mind blowing. And then the stat underneath it, 58% find agents through referrals or repeat relationships. So call it 60% if you want to. And that's maybe why they work with the first agent they talk to. They call the person they like first, but still speed to lead, man. And the conversion rates over on the right side, you got an 8x decrease after 5 minutes. So if you don't get them in that first 5 minutes, you're 8 times less likely to reach somebody. And I know I've done MIT did this big. I suspect that's where these data points are coming from. But it's just really impressive. All right, for the fun stuff, this one's not so fun. Maine is going after home equity laws. So expect if you're in Maine, expect them to get more expensive. And I'm just hoping it stays in Maine. And I'm just throwing this out there, the canary in the coal mine, to see what happens in the future. The execution policy. I didn't know firing squads were allowed, but apparently, if you're on death row, a firing squad is allowed and coming back. So who knew? There you go. And then lastly, George Harrison apparently stayed in a home somewhere in Illinois. I had no idea, but it's about to be listed for 105 grand. So some entrepreneur out there wants to buy a house for 105 grand and turn it into Beatlemania. More power to them. And then product of the week, refinances. We are seeing some, a lot of them for cash outs, even though rates are up, we're still seeing them. And you do, in theory, get to skip a mortgage payment. This tells you what that means and what it looks like. And the last one, I like this one a lot for the meme of the week. Buy at today's rates or buy at next year's home prices. If you're curious where I stand, the left button is the correct one. You can always refinance later. And then lastly, shout out to Miss Tamra. She's awesome, incredibly detailed. I agree. Thank you for all the good words and kind words. And as always, share, subscribe, forward, all that fun stuff. You know what to do. And happy end of April. Welcome May.